In my previous video, I showed how habits affect our playing. In this video, I'll talk about the consequences of habits and why they can be difficult to change. Noticing habits is tricky because, first of all, it's difficult to observe yourself, but also the habits become layered and they become an integral part of this way of playing and that way of playing. And so it's really hard to feather all that stuff out, in a sense, peeling that onion all the way down to, okay, this is where the source is that we're having difficulty. When we play and it doesn't work the way we want, we tend to play harder. We tend to try harder. And if that doesn't work, then, of course, then we try even harder, forgetting that it didn't work. Trying harder doesn't help because it's an ineffective way to begin with. Eventually, from this hard work, we're going to start assuming that playing is difficult or learning new things is hard. But that's not necessarily true. If we think of performing as an action, we are doing something. Of course, you're performing, you're acting, you're doing something. But every action requires a letting go of that action. In other words, when we're playing, we have to release something as part of our performance. For example, you take a breath, you let it go. That's tone. The tone is a release of an action. So tension happens, effort happens, it's created by not letting go fully of everything when we don't need it, but not knowing what or how to let go. We don't know what to release. We don't know how to release it. And so it's this other half of the action. It's the other half of doing something in the performance that gets us into trouble. Now, trying hard is how we feel tension. We make effort. It's one muscle working against another muscle. Bicep, a tricep. When they're together, boom, we get tension. But this effort is not just physical. The nervous system, yes, that controls the muscles, but it also forms how we think, how we perceive things, and how we have feelings, our feelings. The effort that we feel physically reveals that our entire self, our whole self, is not being clear. In addition to making it playing difficult, the consequence for playing with tension, with playing with effort, playing long enough and hard enough can lead to pain and injury. No one has a market on what causes pain. And habits are not the only reason, because it could be injury, it could be disease, it could be a number of things. But from a personal experience as a player and as a teacher, I have found that the habitual ways in playing are one of the significant factors. We tend to view habits as good or bad. When things are working, those are good habits. When things aren't working, those are bad habits. And we want to break those habits. But habits form because they work. So a bad habit is actually a good habit in a different situation. And so our most dominant habits, the ones we use all the time, are the ones that we're going to come into conflict with. Those are really going to be the ones that we think are bad. It's kind of like a strength to a weakness. And so style is one of those dominant habits. We instinctively use the best way to do something. We instinctively choose the best option available. We never intentionally choose to do something the hard way, or we don't intentionally choose to do something the worst way. So the question becomes, do we have choices? Can we choose it this way or that way? Well, that one works. We'll use that. Compulsive habits limit our choice. Having more choices results in an easier performance because we have more clarity by using what works best. The clarity feels easy. The confusion caused by only one way of doing something and not having any choices feels difficult, feels effortful. So it's not about perfecting something because that may not apply over here. So it's about being able to do something in many, many ways so that any point in your performance, whatever you want to express, it's available right away. So the way to break a bad habit is not to break a bad habit, but to develop more ways. The habits in classical and jazz style are really obvious, and that's why I chose it for a demonstration. But the same things that affect classical and jazz style affect everything we do on very subtle levels. And this was the problem I faced when I started teaching. The studio was built on classical and jazz playing. And the problem was the students would come in with one way, familiar way, one style, and they found the other style difficult to learn. I knew what to do, I knew what the techniques and how to play those styles, but I didn't know how they could learn them. And so in our next video, I'm going to talk about how to go beyond your habits so to make your playing easier. I'm Steve Duke. This is saxcoach.org. Thank you for watching.